Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Janet Tran, and I'm privileged to serve as the Director of the Center for Civics, Education, and Opportunity, or the CCEO, here at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. The CCEO works at the nexus of civics and education policy, answering President Reagan's call for an informed patriotism to ensure a more prosperous future for America. Today, as it has always been, the challenges to America and her institutions require an educated citizen and a multifaceted approach. So at the CCO, we're looking to create a collective impact on American society through partnerships that help support these three levers of change: civics, education, and opportunity, all interwoven. Together, the CCO will look to these levers to prepare America to answer the challenges of the 22nd century and to renew the American spirit and sense of purpose. So today I'm proud to continue the Reagan Institute's State of Civics series. The original civic mission of schools has greatly receded during these times and is in greater danger of being further sidelined in a time when many would argue it's most imperative. So at the Reagan Institute, we know that the greatest innovation in civics education occurs at the state level. So through the State of Civics series, we're highlighting the work of states and exploring exemplary civic learning and engagement achievements through the voices of state chiefs, talented teachers, civic leaders in the field, and of course, our students. This program will give a general overview of what's happening around the country, and then we'll zero in on a case study of our highlighted state and look at what is on the horizon. And we're extremely excited to feature an exemplary state in civic education, Georgia. Joining us virtually, we have Georgia's School Superintendent, Dr. Richard Woods. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Additionally, we are joined by Dr. Randell Trammell, CEO of the Georgia Center for Civic Engagement. Welcome. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Melanie Kalem, Professional Learning Specialist for Henry County School District.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks so much, Melanie. And finally, please welcome Krish Patel, State President at the Georgia Center for Civic Engagement and student at North Oconee High School, to our virtual stage.
Everyone.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's such a privilege. And I want to begin more at the macro level and look at where Georgia rests in our current civic learning landscape. So Dr. Trammell, in addition to your tremendous work in Georgia, you've worked and dedicated quite some time with partners across our country who have collaborated or in support of an Educating for American Democracy framework. Around the country, there's a lot of growing support, or at least voices of concern and attention to civics at both the federal and the state level. So maybe to start us off, would you mind sharing with us the status of bills on the floor in the Capitol, state houses around the country? What is happening in the civic engagement field around our nation?
Well, there certainly is a flurry of activity, as you mentioned. It's a good time to be in civic education on one hand, because it's such a prominent topic. Across the country, this is, for the most part, legislative season. Our own legislature here in Georgia called in the session just a few weeks ago. And there are somewhere near 100 bills across the nation that focus on some element of civics education or social studies education, including here in Georgia, we had one establishing the Commission on Civic Education. And so that is, it's definitely a hot topic, and there's a lot of attention being paid to it. Federally also, there's a couple of bills, one in the House, one in the Senate, that would propose additional federal funding to support civic education and U.S. history across the nation.
That's really exciting. Thanks much, Dr. Trammell. So I'm excited to zero in on the state we're highlighting today, Georgia, and I'm especially excited to hear from a superintendent who is a former social studies teacher, department chair, and educator, longtime champion of civics education. And under your leadership, the Department of Education has released a pretty ambitious set of legislative priorities for 2022, including, quote, strengthening civics education and students' understanding of American government and our nation's history. So what led you to choose to prioritize civics, and what is the significance of this choice?
I think for myself, and I'm going to kind of begin with a quote from Thomas Jefferson, I think one of the foremost civic leaders of the United States history. He said that, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. And I think that really sums up, my passion for civics education, the importance of that. This is one of the foundational bedrocks and cornerstones of education, keeping our kids informed, because in K-12, this is where they, lay that foundation. This is where they begin to learn formally about, civics education, our nation's history, the things that they will be able to become engaged with. For myself, I know, being here with the Reagan Institute, I think about Reagan, he talked about, America becoming that shining, city on the hill. And that's what we need to do. If we are to be effective, to be a free people, we need to do so, not in the lens of ignorance, but being informed. And it's our role as educators to make sure that our kids, know what it's like to be an American, know where our foundation comes from, and know how to navigate, the civics part of whether it's elections or running for office or even working within the government, and see how that, definitely promotes the civic good within our state and nation.
Well, I wish you luck in this legislative season, Superintendent Woods. Melanie, you have been recognized as the Henry County School District 2020 Middle School Teacher of the Year. And as someone who thinks all middle school teachers are extremely special anyways, I think it's great that you've been promoted to the Professional Learning Specialist for the district. Maybe a question from an educator's point of view, reflecting on your classroom experiences, how did you prepare our students to become the informed and active citizens that Dr. Woods was speaking about?
Well, thank you so much for that congratulatory question. I am very honored to represent Henry County Schools as their Middle School Teacher of the Year for 2020. And in the classroom last year, one of the ways that I prepared students for civic education was to engage them through civic education, through active learning. I find that the best way to increase knowledge and skills needed for students to be active citizens at the local, state, and national levels is to give them hands-on experience, to take what we learn about in the classroom and apply those knowledge and skills in civic actions. I remember learning about the legislative process in school and middle school and listening to the Schoolhouse Rock song about how a bill, I'm just a bill. But there's another way. And how would students feel? They can actually take on the role as a senator, take on the role as a bill writer or a committee member and immerse in that process. So I believe that bringing learning to life and civic learning, especially to life, prepares students to be active citizens when they are able to do so.
Thanks so much. And maybe now in your current role, I'll just follow up quickly. You travel from school to support teachers who have had a really tough few years. How do you support teachers in Georgia to prepare students for civic life and create that sort of civic laboratory that you're describing where they're practicing their citizenship in school?
So specifically, I support teachers with understanding the Henry County teaching and learning civic standards. So we have adopted specific standards for civic learning through K through 12 and to help teachers. I support teachers in how to leverage our available resources. And we have print and digital resources provided at our school district to help them communicate civic learning experiences that are aligned to those standards. So I feel like my job is to inspire and support them to take hands-on learning kind of to the next level with civics education, to expand access to and opportunities to different experiences and quality civics experiences that are aligned with our Henry County teaching and learning standards. So if I can support them and communicate and let them know what is out there for their students, and then also give them the support they need to actually support their students in that process, I feel that I am doing what I should be doing for civic education in our district.
It sounds like every district in Georgia would benefit from having a learning specialist who is a bit of a civics evangelist as well. So, Kurish, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for being an outstanding student leader, both inside and outside of the classroom. I'd love for you to share with us a little bit about your school community, your educational journey, and your current role as state president at the Georgia Center for Civic Engagement.
Yes, so my civic journey actually started about 4 years ago when I first came to high school. And back then, I didn't really know much about civics. I didn't know much about, broadcasting my opinions, how to back up my opinions with evidence, things like that. But then I became involved with, taking my government classes, with clubs we had at school, with the Georgia Center for Civic Engagement. And I've been doing that all throughout my high school career. And last spring, I was actually appointed to become the president of the Georgia State Center Civic Engagement. And really, our mission, as we like to talk about, is act locally and think locally. So what we try to do in community, we try to create is one where every student has the opportunity to sort of be engaged in civic learning. For example, this last semester, we even had a sort of town hall, if you will, of middle schools and high schools from across the state, in which we taught them about the programs middle school and high school offer, and how we just want to reach out and encompass as many students as we can. So that's really what I'm working toward right now.
Well, let me follow up with what you think sparked your interest in civic engagement initially, because we're all trying to find the magic recipes, if you will, to get students who are engaged like you.
Yeah, sure. So really, I think the root of it, there are two things. One, I have really always have a natural sort of curiosity towards things. And second, I had a teacher freshman year, my AP government's teacher. And like Mrs. Kelm was saying, teachers are the ones who kind of inspire us and build this curiosity within ourselves to learn about these. And taking class and having her introduce me to youth assembly, to the Georgia Center for Civic Engagement, to Model UN conferences and all that type of stuff, that really helped me sort of become curious as to, okay, well, if I become involved in this, what can I get from it? What can I contribute to the community that surrounds me? And ever since then, I haven't looked back. I've just become engrossed with all the different aspects of civic engagement. And I know that for the rest of my life, I'll be using all these. And really, it started then with my teacher, and then just being curious and being open.
Well, I think we're glad to learn that it does start with a teacher. That's why I know as educators, we all hope to be that teacher to at least one, hopefully many students that we reached. I think, though, teachers also need support and initiatives and maybe a little incentive to do this work as well. And thankfully, Georgia is home to many innovative civic education programs and initiatives. For example, Georgia is one of the few states out there where students are actually able to earn a civic engagement diploma seal, something fancy for recognizing their 12 years of school. So Superintendent Woods, would you mind sharing more and maybe humble bragging about the seal? Why is it significant? What do you hope the seal signifies to our students, to colleges and universities, or even potential employees?
I think for myself, even as a teacher, students learn best just not by absorbing information, but actually putting it into practice. And hopefully that's what, we started with this new, social studies seal or civic engagement diploma seal was to not only let students just hear about what government and civics, is, but also becoming active, putting it into practice. And I think for individuals of higher ed, when they see individuals, these are students that have gone above and beyond, other than just receiving a diploma. Now they've added on to that. And it's almost like a new credential, I guess, to show that, these individuals are passionate about civic engagement. But also, I think it shows that these individuals are truly your future leaders. These are individuals that when they go off to college or go off into the military or, wherever they function in life, that they're going to be successful. And especially for those that, pursue higher ed, many times what you'll find out if you have somebody that is engaged, somebody that, goes above and beyond, that their future success and likelihood of graduation, in a post, secondary role is definitely high. So, it puts meaning, to what we teach. put service to the forefront. And hopefully it's something that, just doesn't end at high school, but also what we have instilled within these individuals, that it will continue into their future learning and well into their adult life as well.
Yes, so perhaps one of the most important lessons or skills and attributes that we can give our students and gift our students. So, I think, Dr. Trammell, is there anything, behind this initiative that you'd like to add about the seal? Maybe, a little bit more about the requirements and how it came to be. Would love to, have a scenario where other neighboring states say, well, Georgia's doing this. How do I do this?
Sure. Well, the Superintendent Woods is sort of humble in this fact, but we were the second or third state to actually adopt this civic engagement seal across the nation. And we're now seeing a groundswell of other states that are following in our steps to that. One of the neat components that Dr. Woods highlighted on with this seal is that we have that praxis part of it. There is a civic engagement hour requirement of 50 hours between your freshman and senior years, but 15 hours of that actually has to be doing civic engagement activities such as attending school board meetings or volunteering for campaigns, really getting out of that theoretical framework and into the action and into putting what you've learned into use.
I love you clarifying that as well. There's always this, I think perhaps a false dichotomy debate between whether or not it should be learning and education, just reading or action, when obviously it can be both. So Georgia's modeling that this praxis piece is significant, and it doesn't necessarily mean teaching kids to protest. Going to their school board is absolutely a way to be civically engaged and take civic action. So really removing that stigma in many ways, and perhaps the original content there. Melanie, this is one great program that exists for students and teachers in Georgia, but what other programs are you proud to showcase, and perhaps what are the importance of these experiences?
So I'm glad you asked that question, Janet. And the Civic Diploma Seal is a really good program, and Henry County Schools is part of that program. We're very proud to be a district that is offering that Civic Diploma Seal to our students. And one of the reasons that we can offer that Civic Diploma Seal to our students is because of some of the programs that we have that exist in Georgia, where students can have these civic experiences. And I want to highlight quite a few, but I do quite a few, but I'm just going to highlight 3. So Junior Youth Assembly, because I was a middle school teacher, so they have in the high school, they have regular youth assembly, but in middle school, they have an opportunity for Junior Youth Assembly, where students actually take on the role as a House of Representative or a senator, a state senator in the Georgia General Assembly. And they actually go through the process of how bills become a law in a 2-day program. That program is phenomenal. And from the first year that I actually participated with my students, I promised myself I was always going to offer that opportunity to my students from that point forward, because I believe that they will forever understand how the legislative branch works, and of course, understand how our federal legislative branch works and how a bill becomes a law just by going through that 2-day process. Even if they do it 1 or 2 years. I have students who are seniors now who did this program in 8th grade, and they actually are more involved with civic actions as a teenager and as an adult teenager and as a college student because of that program that they did when they were in 8th grade. We also have Model United Nations, and all these programs are offered through the Georgia Council for Georgia Council for Civic Education, Model United Nations program. And that teaches the global citizenship, cultural appreciation, developing research skills, as well as considering action steps and costs connected to decisions that the United Nations have to make on behalf of all the nations together. So that global citizenship is important as well. And then, of course, last but not least, I want to talk about the National History Day program. It's one of the most impactful and enriching experiences that students can have when preparing for civic participation. One of the things that teachers always explain when we teach civics is being informed citizens, right? How do we become informed citizens? That's through research, right? Through skills and critical thinking, critical reading, critical analysis. And so the National History Day program provides those opportunities. We always hear the phrase that we want our students to think critically on a state level, on a national level, to be able to participate and do what's best for them and in best interest of their community. And they have to be informed. So those 3 programs were all introduced to me through my district. And as wonderful as programs can be to talk about, unless you have a district like Henry County Schools district that's going to encourage, support, and celebrate these programs, access to them can remain limited. I've worked in other districts, but I've only done all of these programs because of the support that we receive. So it's important that districts and teachers receive that support. And not only were these programs communicated to teachers, but resources were provided, opportunities for students to be part of these programs. And to be quite honest, if teachers participate in these programs, they become better teachers as well. I became a better teacher of civics because I extended learning beyond the classroom, and my district supported that and actually celebrated that, and so encouraged that. So as my role as a professional learning spirit specialist, I plan to continue to support that with the teachers and say, yes, communicate these programs do exist, but yes, I'm here to support. And if you need me, I'm here to help you walk through that process.
I love that you spoke about learning that occurs, beyond the 4 walls of the classroom, because if anything, this pandemic has taught us that learning is absolutely possible in a multitude of scenarios. In fact, even more meaningful when you're engaged. And so many of the programs that you've spoken about, simulations like Model UN or National History Day, they are research-based. They are best practices in and outside of the classroom. So it is beholden on us to really provide our students those meaningful opportunities to engage. Krish, I know you're having a little bit of connectivity problems, which is nothing new in this day and age. But if you are ready to speak to us, we obviously want your student point of view about some of the programs that you have helped you grow or improve your leadership skills. I know that you are engaged in many activities that actually Melanie has spoken about.
Yes, so I participated in youth and let me just say that both of those programs have had a monumental impact on myself. And probably the biggest thing I can say is going into my first ever youth assembly, I was petrified by the time to stand up in a room of 100 people and say something. And it was scary at first, but over the course of years, it really has taught me how to be confident when speaking up. During these programs where
Krish, I'm gonna have to ask you to pause. It's getting a little rough on our end over here. So apologies, and I'm not sure if cutting the camera or sound would work here if you want to complete your thought.
Okay.
Well, I think at this point, hopefully we can fix the sound on the back end here, but maybe let's think about the role of adults in supporting these experiences. And I'd love to move back to Superintendent Woods, as we consider this monumental, rapidly changing environment for the workforce. I know you and your team are considering how Georgia prepares students to engage in civil service careers of the future. These are not the same roles that we think about when we talk about our parents' jobs here. And it's difficult to fulfill oftentimes. So would you mind sharing more about what you and your team are doing to address these needs and what perhaps your office feels is within the realm of your responsibility?
Yeah, well, right now we've just started or launching a government official pathway in our career tech program. You think about many kids, when you think about what do you want to be when you grow up, working in a municipality or somewhere in government probably is not the top of the list. So I think, for us, it's just trying to make awareness, what is out there. Many people don't know about the jobs that are there. In fact, just a few days ago, I was at a governmental, gathering of our bureaucracies, where we're looking at a shortage of individuals to fill the roles of what we'd say, I guess, is the bureaucrats or the workers within government. So I think it is very important that we, highlight what's out there, doing some things and, early on, not just wait till high school, but as we look at programs and some initiatives we have in the state to say, these are jobs that you might want to consider and show them, as early as middle school, if not doing some things within, elementary. I mean, we do some things, of course, to highlight, our community volunteers, and maybe we need to expand that role to show young people, these are jobs and they're great careers for you to consider, on down the road. So we're, definitely trying to remove that ignorance and just increase that knowledge. But I think having a pathway that can potentially lead an individual into, government service and work or civics work, then, that's something that we're very proud of. And we continue to, also integrate, this information within, other courses. So not just, isolating civics within the social studies realm, but trying to expand that, whether it be, career tech or, some of our other, core classes.
Definitely. We're hopefully preparing our students for not just college, but career and civic life. So this is in many ways a combination of all of the elements there. Mm-hmm. Dr. Trammell, I think this program would probably be applicable across many states. And, perhaps you'd like to share a little more about, what you learned about the curriculum for this program. What are some key components?
Absolutely. So what is remarkable about this pathway, although it can be found in several states, Georgia is leading the way in as much as when a student takes courses in this pathway, they're not only getting the technical education credit, they're getting social studies credit as well. So really 2 credits in that one class. And it's so nice that Georgia is charting the path for that. And, again, this curriculum is focused on that laboratory experience. So not only are we going to learn about the FOIA process, Freedom of Information Act, but we're going to go in and we're going to write a Freedom of Information request. So it's really the curtains are pulled back and the students get to, in a laboratory setting, dissect government and the different portions of it as well. And one other thing that I would add in here too, really thankful for the Georgia Department of Education. They've made a tremendous investment in making sure that we have a fully staffed department. I remember not too many years ago, we had 1 social studies specialist at the Department of Education, and we now have 4. One that focuses on English as speakers of other languages, ESOL, one that focuses on differentiation with special needs of both gifted and otherwise. And then we have 2 general content experts. So we are so thankful for the department's commitment to that.
Yes, and I love that you're speaking about, this is another example of practice, and you're crediting that learning that happens, not just by reading books, but also by practicing and learning and taking this pathway. A great model, and absolutely credit to the leadership in Georgia. I would love to reflect on student preparation then for this college career and citizenship, Melanie. And when you were in the classroom, how did you know when your students were ready for civic life? As a professional learning specialist, how do you know if your teachers are prepared to guide their students in their civic journeys? It's not going to be a question that is they cross the finish line, but how do you know that we're on the right path?
So for my philosophy of education, I taught primarily middle school students. So if you're familiar with that age range, you will understand that they feel that they are ready for anything. They feel invincible. And I take advantage of that feeling. I love the middle school age range because of that. They feel invincible and they are risk takers. And those are the type of students that are ready for anything. So when I talk about students, is when they cross through the threshold of my door and to my classroom, if they can walk and talk, they're ready. And so I feel my job as their teacher, or my responsibility as their teacher, is to bring learning to life and to give them the experiences and teach them and what they don't know, and help them develop skills that they aren't developed. So they're all going to be ready. And as a professional learning specialist in my role, supporting teachers across the district, I feel as if my primary role is to help them understand, first and foremost, the Henry County teaching and learning civic standards. So they have to understand them to the point of what skills need to be developed under that standard, what knowledge needs to be gained under that standard. So that is my job, to help them understand that so they can contextualize that information and then provide these meaningful, authentic, and engaging experiences for children. And if you look at the standard and you break down actually what the student has to know and be able to do at the end of that lesson with you, that civics lesson, then you're going to be ready to teach it, because you have the support and you have the resources. And we provide print and digital resources for our students across all subject areas. So there are resources there for teachers. I make sure that they understand where the resources are and how the standards align with our teaching and learning practices. I also give them support with high yielding strategies with civic education. For example, maybe the best way to teach local government is to maybe have the students interview local government workers about their jobs and responsibilities, or maybe take on those responsibilities. So we just want to make sure that our teachers have support and resources to do what they need to do for our students, so that our students are ready for civic life.
There is so much that we expect our teachers to do, and it seems more complex and absolutely astounding each and every single day as this progresses. Teachers, they undoubtedly play a key role in ensuring that our students have this access to high quality civic learning opportunities. Superintendent Woods, I know another one of your legislative priorities is, quote, elevating the teaching profession, which, I think we had a bounce for a while, then it became another, maybe perhaps it's an ebb and flow in terms of support publicly. But how do you support teachers in Georgia to ensure they actually have the time and resources to have the content knowledge of civics and American history, and the proficiency to go about with confidence using these pedagogical practices that promotes quality civic learning?
I think one of the things, I think it begins with a good solid foundational base. I think our, I believe, fully know that our standards, which we expect our teachers to teach, again, they have to be presented in a way which, they're not spending time unpacking, spending time, but they're getting ready really to prepare to deliver the content. So, working to make sure that that, is the foundational basis, what we have. Continuing that, I think we always want to, provide, exceptional training for our teachers. Multiple course and grade level specific professional learning opportunities, for social studies to all of our educators is extremely important. In this virtual world, I think what we have found out is that we can deliver a lot of content and reach a lot of people instead of bringing them up to Atlanta or a certain location. We can expand this where sometimes it's hard to get from one point to another within the state, but using, the virtual platform to reach and to continue to support our teachers. One of the things as well, we have a social media community for social studies teachers and civics, teachers. I think myself, when I was a teacher back in Irwin County, I was the only, world history teacher. So the only person I had, and this was the age before social media, the only person I had to talk to was myself. So, I had to make sure I was spot on. And I think that's, something that we look at trying to, build that community. It's always good to have that collaboration between, your peers. We have sample units, social studies units, and labs, available, which they can access through the Department of Education. We continue to build on this standards aligned video lessons taught by Georgia teachers. So again, you get that real sense of what's going on in the classroom. Giving our teachers more resources that they can pick and choose and select. And so they can continuously improve what's going on in the classroom, and definitely digital learning plans, lesson or learning plans through our Georgia home classroom. So we're not only having an impact on our teachers, but also for those outside of education. It could be parents, could be those within the private school system that, we want to make sure that everyone succeeds. And so, putting up those resources, supporting teachers, and letting them know that they are valued. I think that was one of the things that coming on board to make sure that, we increase the capacity. I think as Dr. Trammell mentioned, when I came on board, we had one person for the entire state trying to, do all things social studies. But now what I've instructed and have the staff doing is that we're not working by ourselves, but we're working as a team throughout the Department of Education, bringing in other individuals. I think even, showing that within our fine arts department, they collaborate, extremely well with our social studies team, and have done some phenomenal work, and actually, gain national recognition for what they do, collectively together. So, supporting that, elevating them, and making sure that they are recognized, as a vital part of our child's education.
I love that you mentioned your teaching days. Very often people leave the profession because they feel it's an island. And if there was a community of practice of professionals, and that the profession itself was elevated and less isolating, and it's not just you and your students, perhaps we would be able to keep more talent in the profession. So, I know that's retaining teachers and expanding that pipeline is extremely important to what you hope to accomplish. And I commend you on that. Krish, it looks like you're on with a different connection. So fingers crossed, because we always want to hear student voice and make sure that we're addressing the right questions and moving the right priority areas. Since we all allege that we're doing this for students, I never want to exclude student voice here. I do want to think about, we've talked a lot about what schools are doing, what teachers are doing. And I always think it's pretty rich that a lot of school mission statements say that they're preparing students for civic life, but often what happens on paper versus what happens in the classroom is different. So, if you could share with us how schools and other organizations have prepared you to become a citizen of your community in Georgia and nationally, I'd love to learn from you there.
Yeah, definitely. So, hopefully my audio is better now.
Much better.
Right. Okay. Yes. So I think one thing that schools do very well is, one, they teach us the content, but two, they give us an outlet where we can apply the content to real life. So we've talked about youth assembly, we've talked about Model UN. Well, these are principles about how a bill becomes a law that we learn in classroom that we get to actually experience, and what lawmakers at the local, state, and national level actually go through. And I think that is really powerful as we're considering the next generation of people that are going to be in these positions, that they need this experience from this age to know what it feels like. And schools are doing a really good job with that, in my experience. And then also just one more thing about the teachers. It all goes back to the teachers. It's the teachers that put in the hours to get these opportunities for us. It's the administration of the schools that approve these field trips, that approve us going to these programs. And really, in my 4 years of high school, I've been able to go to every opportunity that I've wanted to. And then one thing, of course, we've had the COVID pandemic over the past year and a half. And fall of 2020, the state youth assembly actually got canceled because of the pandemic. But one thing that I was able to work with my administration with was to actually hold a school-wide version of youth assembly on campus. And what this looked like is there was about 80 or so attendees there. We were able to have a legislative, executive, and a media program. And we had able to social distance, mask were encouraged, everything like that. It was perfectly safe. And we were just really glad that we got to sort of partake in this really important civic engagement opportunity, even though we were in the midst of this pandemic.
That's great. I saw Superintendent Woods smile, not just because a great experience, but you also mentioned the word safe, which is also a main priority for the superintendents out there right now. You spoke a little bit about teachers, and I do want you to dig in a little more and share, how maybe some specific examples of how they influenced your civic involvement, just to make sure that we covered that.
Yeah, sure. Yes. So my AP Government Politics teacher, Dr. Cole, she's just been amazing. She was my teacher in 9th grade. But the important thing is it's not like I took her class once and then I never heard from her again. She kept up with me. She keeps up with all her students. I've been talking to her continuously for the past 4 years. She runs a civics club. She's our advisor for these youth assembly trips. And it's really just that level of relationship and connection she has with each and one of her students. And I'm sure that teachers from all across the state have with their students, and really caring about what they're learning, how they're learning it, and making sure that whatever questions we have, they're addressed, any concerns, and just whenever I need to talk about something related to civic engagement, or if I found, hey, there's this new opportunity that I'm interested in, I know that some other peers of mine are interested in, she's always open to hear our ideas. And I know from hearing Ms. Kellum speak that other teachers in the state are just like this. So it's really, really important to have someone like that in your life that you know you can go to, that will always help you participate in what you're looking for.
I think that's just really helpful for us to, understand the role of teacher voice. And, I think we know, and research shows that an effective teacher is so critical to a student's life. But, the role of teacher voice is very much aligned in many ways with student voice. So, Melanie, I'd love for you to think about the role of teacher voice and what it plays in civic education policy. And perhaps how can teachers realize the full potential of their voice and, be mindful of that as well, to advocate for what our students need to thrive in civic life? Oh, Melanie, you're on mute. The most commonly used words in the past 2 years.
I just knew I couldn't go the whole hour, but it's okay. I apologize.
No worries.
So teacher voice is extremely important in education, in civic education, and all education. But the voices of students, like I was just smiling through Chris's speech about his experiences, or him listening to him talk about his experiences just make my heart smile. And so student voice, teacher voice, community voice, parent voice, all of the stakeholders that depend on the school community should have a voice in civic education. And the way in Henry County schools, teacher voice is extremely important. And one of the ways that we include teacher voice is by including them on, the Board of Education has developed a strategic plan of action. And it was all based on the stakeholder voice. And so every teacher across the district had the opportunity to lend their voice to this 5-year strategic plan. So you're going to be the teachers doing this work. And at every level, we were involved and had a seat at the table for that. And that was appreciated. And then any policy that the board actually puts in place is up for public review before it actually is put for a vote. So teachers have the opportunity to come and look at policy initiatives before they pass and offer comments and feedback. And that feedback and those comments are welcomed. As far as teacher voice in my specific role in social studies, one of those initiatives that came out of that strategic plan from the stakeholder voice and from the teacher voice is the need for a more robust financial literacy education. And I can argue that is still part of civics, because if there's an issue in the community, that the community says that if we don't bolster our financial literacy education, we can have a problem in our community, then that's part of civic action by participating in those focus groups. And right now we're looking to involve teachers on a focus group to look at the standards that we have in financial literacy, and to see where we can maybe bolster them and make them more robust so that we can meet the needs of that community. And I believe that those types of opportunities that teachers have should be taken, and they should be taken as much as they can, and have the opportunity to just sit on focus groups and to look at board policy and to comment and give feedback. And so whenever your voice is allowed and is welcomed, share it. So that's what I would tell teachers. Offer your voice whenever it's asked. Go ahead and offer it, and offer your opinion and your comment and your feedback. So that's what I would say.
Well, thank you for sharing. I do think looking at some of the questions that were posed to us from our audience, which I apologize that I won't be able to get to them all. There's a lot of interest in this particular panel, but someone did ask about the impediments to teaching civics, and I do think you approached that teacher voice piece and address some of those impediments and some potential solutions as well. Dr. Trammell, I would love to go to you to think about, why should all teachers, regardless of what they teach, whether it's math or STEM or financial literacy or economics, be trained to teach or engage in civics in some capacity? And what can that look like for people who are not necessarily a social studies teacher?
Well, when you really think of civics, you're not necessarily training them about one course. You're preparing them for citizens, which is certainly far beyond math or anything else. And civics is much more than voting. It's about participating in your community. It's about being the little league coach or the PTA president. But there's like English language arts has a wonderful opportunity to use the primary sources of the founding documents and the Library of Congress and so many wonderful, the National Archives, so many wonderful resources to integrate into their teaching, and they can use compare and contrast. And, when you look at the United States Constitution and compare it to that of Australia and Great Britain's, which are all sort of tied together, that's certainly a great thing. And it also just builds upon each other in the relevance. Math, how does civics play in math? Well, we all pay taxes. And, if you want to have a new park in your community, somebody's got to pay for it. And, if it's a school thing, it may be a SPLOST, special local option sales tax. So you can use those opportunities to teach students to budget, as mentioned. Personal financial literacy is so important as well. And that's, to me, economics and civics are brothers and sisters, really, in terms of curriculum. And then science, you have the EPA and you have local ordinances to protect the environment, and understanding cause and effect on, building a new 700 home subdivision on the terrain, and why cities and counties and states make such decisions that they do is important. I think overall, though, that, teachers, certainly we have the standards that are state aligned, and every state has different standards, but kind of across the nation, you've got a couple of frameworks that teachers can use successfully. You've got the C3 framework that the National Council for Social Studies pulled out, the college, career, and civic life framework. And then you also have the Educating for American Democracy framework. And again, those are not standards. It's really just a framework for presenting and teaching the content, which is state guided.
I appreciate your adding to the discourse here and mentioning things like C3 and EAD. And what I love about frameworks is that, they're not prescriptions. You can take what you want from them. There are some great lines of inquiry, and you can apply them to your local area. So thanks for bringing those up. And whether or not you agree with anything 100% is not relevant, because you can pick and choose to make sure that you're serving your students as best you can. So thanks for sharing all those creative solutions and how people are interested in supporting civic life can embed elements of civics in their classroom. So the final formal question I have before we go into audience Q&A is for all of our panelists. And I'll start with our youngest panelist first. But the question is, how do we elevate the role of civics in the schools once again? A really popular statistic is federally we spend 5 cents on social studies to $52, $56 on STEM per pupil. And it's simply just not getting enough, and that's just one example, but not getting enough attention or demand. So how do we elevate the role of civics in the schools again? And perhaps what are you most excited about when you look towards the future of civic education and learning in Georgia and perhaps across the US? So I'll start with you, Krish.
Right. So yes, that's definitely something that we do need to address. And I liked how Dr. Trammell brought up the fact that even if you're interested in STEM, science or math, there's always going to be a civic component to that. And I was smiling when he was saying that, because I remember having a conversation with someone exactly like that, saying, I'm just a STEM person. Why should I be concerned with policy or government or anything? I was like, well, you're going to pay taxes at one point, right? What's it going to look like? And I think that's hitting the nail on the head right there, is understanding that civics encompasses really all aspects of life, whether you're going to go into a field in policy or not, and really just outreach. That's the main thing that we've been working here at the Georgia Center for Civic Engagement, is just trying to cover, get to as many people as we can, trying to spark that initial curiosity within students across the state, and just giving them any opportunity to participate in this. And as far as what I'm excited for the future is for Youth Assembly, for example, after a year of the COVID year, we are going back this spring, having a full-fledged conference. So I'm very excited for that, very excited to see everyone back there at the 3-day conference and all the bills and ideas and discussions that are going to happen. So while the pandemic is still very, on everyone's minds, we're doing the best we can in making a safe learning environment, and just making sure that people understand that even though COVID is here, we want to make sure everyone has opportunities that they would want to have.
I breathe a sigh of relief, because I think all of us have gratitude, that our students are able to get through this. And you've been far more resilient than we'd ever hoped, even though we're all still very concerned and want to provide those supports. I know Superintendent Woods, you've added that to your list of priorities as well. But let me move now to Melanie, if you wouldn't mind, maybe sharing your perspective of how do you think we can elevate the role of civics in the schools again, and something that you look forward to? Oh, mute.
I apologize. It took me a minute to find my button. I am excited to elevate civics here in Henry County School District. We are charged with expanding. Part of that strategic plan is expanding opportunities, access, and outcomes. And civic education is where we can, especially as a social studies professional learning specialist, is where we can really expand and get more students into programs like Youth Assembly and Model United Nations. They even have at the State Bar of Georgia, they have a mock trial program, a one-day mock trial program that you can go through. There's all kinds of different experiences that students can have. And the more access, the more students involved in those hands-on activities and those hands-on experiences, the more we can elevate civic education. I like the idea that in the COVID era that Christian's district or Christian school was able to have a youth assembly at their school. And that's something that I can talk to our board about, maybe expanding and having our own kind of those types of experiences for our students, that we can have that consistent expectation. I also feel like in my role or in education, coming from the state and all these state programs, is the bolstering of those experiences, and the bolstering of empowering teachers with support, empowering teachers with resources, and our opportunities to grow themselves in civic knowledge, so that they can then again transfer that knowledge to our students. So expanding the training in civic education that social studies teachers receive at the district level, at the state level. And I see that those things are coming down the pipe. So I'm very excited about where civics in Georgia is headed. So I think we're on that elevator, and I'm hoping that we continue to go up and I think onward. Up and onward.
And I love that the hybrid, that we've spoken about this hybrid opportunity as well. Obviously, there's such a value to in-person learning, but we shouldn't just forget all the hard-earned lessons during this pandemic, that we are able to virtually connect as well and give resources and access. So appreciate that. Dr. Trammell, what do we need to do to elevate civics in the schools again? And what are you excited for in Georgia and across the U.S.?
So I'll keep my response fairly short here. There's two things that we could elevate civics here in Georgia. Number one, carve out time and dedicate time for it, specifically in the classroom, even though it's a part of the daily regiment. Sometimes the social sciences are pushed to the fringes. And then funding. You mentioned earlier the nickel investment federally. I don't know if you've checked lately, but you can't even buy a gumball for a nickel. And so, that's a challenge. Let me say very clearly that our State Department of Education has always answered any call that I've asked, and have always made their staff and resources available to us. So they do a wonderful job. But I think there's some other opportunities maybe for our state to include it in the budget, to have a deeper and more significant investment in that. For example, some of our neighbors, Tennessee, recently, I think the governor announced $1 million+ a year investment in civic education. Florida's and tens of millions of dollars. So it's certainly an opportunity. Our friends in economics, their natural funding partners are the banks and the financial institutions, and in civics, your natural funding partners, the government. And so certainly there's an opportunity there. And what am I excited about? I'm excited about the momentum that we have with these programs, this incredible pathway that is with the Department of Education, bringing folks together like the Georgia Municipal Association and the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia and the Carl Vince Institute of Georgia, and all of these great, wonderful leaders in industry, to really invest in line to public service. And that is so exciting to me.
I feel like we could speak all day about these upcoming potentials for civics, but we don't have all the time in the world. I'm going to leave the last word with Superintendent Woods here. Not every state is as lucky as Georgia to have a former social studies teacher at the helm. But what are you, looking forward to in terms of the state of civics in Georgia? And of course, we talked a little bit about it, but how do we continue to elevate the role of civics, not just in Georgia, but how do we all do this work?
I think, for myself, especially in this role and, coming from the Department of Education, leadership is important. Leadership, sets the course, it sets the vision. And, I think we've been able to successfully navigate that. Again, as kind of mentioned, going from one person to 4 individuals within that, expanding opportunities, whether it's our diploma seals, and letting our teachers know that we're investing in them, that, we show that this is important, and, we have to be intentional. We have to be focused on that. And I think even, once again, for myself, is seeing that this is something that you have to have, beyond me being here, not something that based on, my presence within the Department of Education. At some point, there will be a new state school superintendent. And so we want to make sure that we instill throughout the state and what's working with our members of the General Assembly and community that, that civics education really is a vital organ to the success of, our state, to the success of education. And so we want to make sure that becomes something that lives beyond a certain individual, but becomes, something that it really takes on a life of its own, as I guess a momentum or, something, an unstoppable snowball, I guess, going downhill that depending, like I said, regardless of who's here, that it continues to grow. Definitely very excited about where we started, roughly almost 8 years ago, where we go and where we continue to go. I think for myself, being a former coach as well, my goal is to make sure that Georgia, is number 1, that all the other 50 states and territories are fighting for number 2. So that means that we can never, date ourselves. We can't, become, grandpa's old shop class in a sense, but, we've got to push forward. And that means how do we, better, reach our students, prepare our teachers, and get them engaged in the process. So, really the success is, has a unlimited ceiling as far as I'm concerned, and we're just going to keep grabbing for that and pushing forward.
That's leadership for you. And I do appreciate you speaking about the need to be institutionally embedded and not just character-based and driven, because we do need this to work for all of our students for quite some time. So I do want to jump into some audience questions. The first one is about equitable opportunities, and I'll rephrase it a little bit, but an audience member has asked what Georgia is doing to level academics and through the lens of civics across the counties. And they've experienced different school districts in Newton, Walton, and Gwinnett and felt the difficulty of classes were drastically different in each county. So just wondering what Georgia is doing to shrink this barrier. So I think I will bring this back to you, Superintendent Woods or Dr. Trammell, if you'd like to share as well.
Yeah, I think, again, for Georgia, we continue to, take leadership in this area. Of course, it begins with building a foundation that, we have the expectation for all students with our standards, whether, you're in Metro Atlanta or, down along the coast or one of our rural, districts, we have the expectations that all of our kids will have access to a great education. One of the things as well, I think, using this virtual environment, is preparing our teachers. And we want to make sure that no teacher is isolated, but everyone has that sense of community. So I think that, as I mentioned before, some of the things and steps we have taken to better prepare each teacher so they can, be that person of influence within their schools. I mean, I think, why did I get into this? I think about Mr. Norwood, I think about Mr. Hudson, and these teachers that definitely had an impact on myself. So, it's really, recognizing, the impact that teacher can have, trying to reach out to our business community, our civic organizations and other individuals, expanding our capability and not just relying on the Department of Education and government, to make this happen. But also, I think, and that being said, it is reaching out to our governor and members of the General Assembly to gain and garner their support so they can recognize the value that this, potentially has for each and every student in each and every school. And I think we have one school system that has less than 100 kids, but that one system deserves the greatest education that can be afforded to them by the state of Georgia, prepare them, because they are just as important as any of our larger systems, perhaps up here in the metro area. So, we're going to continue to expand those roles, see how we can better prepare our teachers, give our kids opportunities and support what's going on within the districts, but also trying to expand our base so that we can invite more individuals and more businesses and nonprofits to be a part of this great endeavor and not just try to take it on by ourselves.
And I know we are close to time right now, so I'm just going to jump into the next question, have anyone who'd like to jump in. This one is extremely important across the country right now, and a problem that we at the Reagan Institute are trying to solve and be part of the solution. But what can be done to take down the temperature down on schools and teachers who find themselves amidst the political crosshairs over instructional decisions related to teaching civics, current history, current events? What can we do to help, as opposed to fuel the flame further?
I'll jump in here. One of the things we do here in Georgia at the Center for Civic Engagement is, as Krish and Melanie both mentioned, is the Youth Assembly program. Now, this is, students are creating bills, and certainly they can consist of controversial issues. We certainly don't tell the students you can't do this. But the important part of this is that they research this, they come up with an opinion. And I think the key element that we're missing a lot is the ability to hear both sides of an argument and to, and maybe not agree, but to understand that there are other points of view as well. So that's one area is, and we focus on the process and not the politics. We always say, the politics will come in time, but we really want to focus on the process. So that's what I would add to that question to sort of put some ice on the temperature.
Krish or Melanie? Melanie?
Okay. What I would say is what I can do in my role, and what I would tell teachers to do, is to lean on the support that you have in your school and in your district. We have standards. As long as you're teaching the standards and everything, all the resources are, and we have available resources in print and digital that align with those standards, then you don't worry about all of that. Let everyone else worry about that. Because your primary role, I don't want teachers to be in the room thinking about the temperature. I want them thinking about the students, those experiences the students are going to have, the well-being of the students that they see in that classroom, and the standards that they have to teach, and that they are responsible for teaching and helping develop those skills with those students. And if they focus on that, the temperature outside is not going to matter, because it's always going to be cool in your classroom. If you just stay on course and keep the children and what's the best interest for the kids in your mind, you'll be fine. Don't worry about that temperature.
That's a motto right there. Keep it cool in the classroom. So Krish,
cool.
how do we keep it cool in the classroom and the schools?
Yeah, definitely. One thing that Dr. Trammell mentioned was how at the youth assembly programs that while people may not always agree, based on whatever their own personal views are, we always respect each other's opinions. We always try to find some way to compromise. And really, I think that principle can be taken from these programs back into the classroom is no matter what, when you put a group of people together, there's always going to be differing opinions, but learning over, especially high school is a great environment for this, but learning how to accept other people, even though they have different opinions, learning how to compromise when you're talking about these different, perhaps controversial issues, that would definitely help in this cooling process.
And you definitely shared a lot about the role of dissent in your educational journey. Now I'll take it to the hot seat itself. How do you keep it cool, Superintendent Woods?
Well, I think Melanie really kind of hit the nail on the head. I think as long as our teachers keep the focus on what we expect as a state, our standards, I think are well written. We don't hide from, controversial topics. I mean, we talk about things such as, slavery, Jim Crow, the Trail of Tears, the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. And so it's not shying away. And I think it's, just if we stay focused on that, focused on our children, then, we're fine. I like your example of keeping cool. I said, one thing about, with teachers and leaders in schools, we control the thermostat. And I think that's one of the things we have to look at is that we can make that temperature go up, we can make it go down. But also I think, we have the ability to find that sweet spot, so we can focus on what we need to focus on. And I think that's one of the missions. Sometimes, the adult world gets kind of blended. Sometimes within Georgia, I think that even looking at some of the legislation we're talking about, it's very reflective of a national movement or things that are taking outside. But, as long as we keep our eyes on our kids and making sure they get a great education so that they can become good, active, well-informed, citizens, then, we're going to be okay. Like I said, we just need to, keep that focus. And as I always, kind of revert back, I said, if all else fails, drop back to common sense. And I think if we have that, common sense mentality, we're going to be fine. And we are going to be fine in the state of Georgia.
This has been such a refreshing conversation. And I have a lot of hope for the climate for civic learning, especially in Georgia, and a lot of hope for our democracy. So I just want to express my thanks to all of you, our esteemed panelists today, for joining us. We appreciate so much your contributions to this conversation and your commitment to civic learning and education in general.